So stories literally bypass the critical thinking part of the brain. They engage the croc brain, which we've talked about, and your prospect, this is really powerful, your prospect cannot help but live vicariously through the main character in your story. So it needs to be a relevant story, but when you explain something in the body of a story, your prospect, provided it's relevant, cannot help but live vicariously through the main character in the story. It is one of those things that just happens automatically. You can even use stories to stop objections before they come up. So if you have a particular objection that comes up a lot, and you can relate a story about somebody who had that concern and about how it totally turned out to be unfounded or erroneous, then that is a very elegant way to prevent that objection coming up later on down the track. So there's all sorts of levers that we can pull using stories, and it is just the most elegant way to explain or to sell anything. It really is. So, wherever possible, if you can explain something in the body of a story, do that, right? And then here's the other cool thing, is that you could have a team of salespeople and they can all have stories just similar to the ones that we came up with before, and then even if it's not your story, you can still use it. And so what does that sound like? Well, it sounds like this. Your situation reminds me of a client that we worked with that was going through a similar problem to what you had. They were a similar demographic to you. They were in a similar area to you. What we recommended was, what happened was, and what specifically changed in their business was this. So with the private clients I work with, one of the things that I encourage them to do, and that we actually do as a group in the sessions that we run, is we get the guys to relate specific success stories that they're having. And then what else can we use these stories for? Someone tell me. Starts with a C. Yeah, case studies. So suddenly you can use them for content as well. So if you've got a client that you work with that you had an amazing result, then you can use that to share with somebody else who might want to get that result as well. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can use this. And like I said, I could run an entire workshop, an entire day, probably an entire 2 or 3 days on stories alone. So it's...